Well, I mean, it's, you just got to think about, in my opinion, those that came before you. You had people like Fred Hampton that paid the ultimate price.
Yeah.
He paid the ultimate price with his life because he was basically someone who got everyone up off their ass. Fred Hampton motivated and got Appalachians. He got Asians. He got like indigenous people to this continent. Native Americans. He got them mobilized and active within the Panther Party. And, such a unifying force like that, it brought him into the limelight. It brought him into the crosshairs, I should say, of the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover. And so what we see, and I bring that up because what we're seeing is like that nothing changes. You know what I mean? Everything just comes around like full circle. So in things coming around full circle, we see now that the government once again is targeting folks that are unifiers, or as J. Edgar Hoover wanted to call them, the black messiahs. And so anybody who's a motivator, anybody who is active and perhaps and possibly effective, they're going to target. Does that mean that folks should be scared to fight? Well, I'll be honest with you. It's not for everybody. You know what I mean? It's safe enough to come out and just lend support. It's safe enough to come out and maybe you're a great litigator. You know what I mean? If that's what you do, that you don't have to get in front of the cameras. You don't have to speak to people. You don't have to do those kinds of things. Just stay within your lane and stay within what you're comfortable doing, but do something. That's the key. But you have some people that are natural born leaders, some people that want to get out there, that feel compelled to get out there and lead. And so, and we're not all leaders, and you got to know when to lead and know when to follow. So, I just think everybody should assume their roles, but the worst thing you could do is to do nothing. It ain't about us overcoming it because we're not the ones with the problem. It's about a break in tradition. We need a break into tradition. Remember what I said earlier about things going in circle? Same damn thing. Police traditionally have been the protectors of white supremacy or white privilege, period. So when black folks are perhaps don't want to take any shit, they are tired of sitting in the back of the bus. They don't want to go to the blacks only water fountain, sit on the blacks only side, and go through the blacks only door. And most of the time, those things, they're separate, but they're not equal. And so, in the past, we saw that. And who was called? Law enforcement. You know what I mean? Law enforcement have always been the protectors of white privilege, white supremacy, period. And so these white folks that we see nowadays that automatically run and call 911 about a person who is in the neighborhood they've always been in, and you call the police on them because they look suspicious. How the hell is someone that's been in that area before you came there, how are they the suspicious one? But it's just that's always going to be their go-to, and sometimes they don't even know why, because it's hot, but it's ingrained in them. That's how they were raised. They watched their parents do it. So that's what they do. You believe in something that, hasn't harmed you detrimentally. And it just makes me think about a conversation I had with a guy. I was locked out of my car. So I called a buddy of mine, white guy, to come and unlock my door because I left the keys in the car. And this guy, we had great conversations in the past, but he's been in the trouble. He's been incarcerated, but he still has this great or wonderful opinion about law enforcement, even though he's been a victim of it. He admits that he did wrong to be incarcerated, but he was also railroaded. And here's the thing that goes into what he was taught and the tradition, because in the end, it's not him or he who wakes up at night wondering, my kids are late coming in, did the police get them? Or were they shot by the police? And so when you don't have those traumas and those fears, you know what I mean, going through you, yeah, you're going to have less of a fear and less apprehension about police. And so, you know, we don't have that luxury or that privilege. And so I think that it just comes from that tradition, bro. And if it's not up to us to break it, white folks got to do that. You can't train, you know, here's my thought on that. You can't train racism out of people, but what you can do is show it to them. You know, sort of like, you know, you have to sensitize them to it. So, you know, in the same way that you have, they have dogs with that shock collar. It's an animal's natural inclination to want to be free. But you can domesticate them, or you can use that shock collar, so to speak. And that shock collar would be certain, you know, the shame, the punishment, you know what I mean, the repercussions for being racist. Those things can serve as like a shock collar that will basically sensitize a person or condition them into not acting on their bias or acting on their racism. And I think ideally that's what those things, you know, can do. You know what I mean? If implemented, you know, correctly, and folks recognize, now that I have this training, I am now accountable. And so now if you're accountable and you still do this crap, you're fired. You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, if that's the case, you know, if they handle it in that way, I think that it can be effective. Maybe not to the degree that we need it to be, but, you know, to some degree it will be effective, and, you know, any as well.